Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm joined by Gary today on this sunny Thursday. Gary, I wondered whether we could start by you introducing yourself, please.
No worries, Amy. Thank you. My name's Gary Kernahan. You might be able to tell from my accent. I'm Scottish. I live in Glasgow. Up until recently, I've always had a UK-wide role, so spent a lot of time in airports and travelling about. Now, thankfully, I don't have to do that. So I'm currently the Director of Fundraising and Business Development at Children First, who are Scotland's national children's charity.
That's lovely, thank you very much. And how's Scotland looking today? Are we bright and shiny?
The sun is starting to come out. I'm in Glasgow. It was a little bit dark and threatening to rain earlier on today, but the sun is starting to shine. It's not as nice today as it has been in other days this week. I was out cutting my grass late last night.
I love it. So Gary, tell us a little bit. I guess we'll start right at the beginning, if that'd be all right. So what did you want to be when you were growing up, Gary? What was your ambition?
I think, like, at one point, like most young boys, I had dreams of being a professional footballer or sports person of some description, but I was never very good at any of those things. So I'm probably a wee bit unusual to some of the people that you're interviewing as part of this series, Amy, because actually from quite a young age, I decided I wanted to be a fundraiser. So I started fundraising sort of more consciously and regularly when I was about 12, and met somebody who went on to be an amazing mentor for me, Edith Laidlaw, who was a community fundraising manager for Cancer Research Campaign, Cancer Research UK now. And the first fundraising event we did raised £64.50, and Edith made us feel like we had raised thousands and encouraged us to get more involved, and over the years went on to raise thousands for the charity. And through that process of getting to meet Edith and getting to understand that, you know, people do this all the time for charity, that actually I sort of set about wanting to be a fundraiser. So I went off to uni and picked subjects which I thought were going to be helpful in being a fundraiser, and continued to volunteer to the extent that when I graduated I then started to apply for fundraising jobs. And that part I found really difficult, because I found it's impossible actually to get an entry-level role in Scotland. So I had, you know, by that point I'd been volunteering for like 9 years and had done quite a lot of different things, and I just couldn't get interviews. So I started applying for jobs a bit further afield and got offered a post with Cancer Research UK in Manchester. So I packed up life in Glasgow and moved to Manchester, and was down there for three years before moving back to Scotland. So I think you know, having mentors formally and informally, and being able to learn from really amazing managers over my career has helped me enormously. And just that, you know, that very stage, I don't know sort of what direction I would have gone in if it hadn't been for Edith.
A fundraiser that was meant to be a fundraiser. That's unusual. I love it. So tell us about your career, Gary. Where are you now, and how did you get there?
So I have been the permanent director of fundraising and business development at Children First since January, but I actually joined the charity as an interim director back in March of 2019. But just to go back a wee bit further with that, so starting my career with Cancer Research UK, was with them for 5 years, initially working in Manchester, as I mentioned, and then I transferred back to Scotland, and I got seconded into a managerial position to be the regional manager for the community fundraising team in the west of Scotland and Northern Ireland. And Cancer Research UK restructured, and the role that I was seconded into disappeared. So I was left with a decision. You know, this charity meant an awful lot to me, but I had this amazing experience, and I could have gone back to being, part of the team that I was managing. But I'd really enjoyed that managerial role. I'd enjoyed that additional responsibility. I had enjoyed contributing in a different way, and I didn't want to take a step back then, so I started looking for other roles and other opportunities, and I moved on to the National Autistic Society. I was only there for a short period of time, and then an opportunity came up with Muscular Dystrophy UK, and I took that role on. August 2009, I took that role on, and in the December of that year, I was offered a promotion to be the head of the department, and I was with Muscular Dystrophy for 9 years. Left there to join Think Consulting Solutions, which is where my connection with Children First came around. So through Think, I did a range of interim management and consultancy projects. I think I worked with I did 4 different interim roles, and I supported about 30 different charities with consultancy work. And one of those interim roles, was with Children First. And I came in initially as strictly an interim, there for a couple of months to help the charity, and over time grew to a real connection to the cause, a connection to the people, and really excited about the direction of travel. So was delighted to join the charity on a permanent basis at the start of the year.
That's brilliant. So you've obviously had a wide variety of roles. Is there something that stands out for you? Is there sort of a highlight to your career?
Well, I would say the most satisfying period of my career was probably at Muscular Dystrophy UK, when I became the head of the community fundraising and supporter care team. The team was underperforming. It'd just been through a massive restructure. Morale was not great, and went about rebuilding the team, refocusing the team. And in the first year that I was head, this is partially one of the reasons why it was the most satisfying period of my career. We managed to grow our net income by 428% within the first 12 months. And went on from there for the community that used to, when I first joined, contributed about 5% of the charity's net income. When I left, they contributed 34% of the charity's net income. So it became the largest, and the director used to say, the strategically most important income source. So that was probably one of the most satisfying periods of my career. I loved the team that I had and built. We had a really high performing team. People, really talented, real hard workers, and I loved that. I loved seeing the team grow. There was a couple of senior managers I had. I think 5 of them have now gone on to become heads of fundraising in their own right. So whilst I take no credit for their successes, I kind of look on like a sort of proud parent almost at how they've done. Also at Muscular Dystrophy, it was small enough for you to have an impact, small enough to make changes, but big enough to have an impact at. And we developed a number of things which I'm really proud of, and tried a few things that didn't work, so got that opportunity to try some things in there. I think amongst some of the lessons that I've learned that stood me well in the later career was learning, audience first, product second. Understand your donors and what they're interested in, and develop propositions that will appeal to them, which sounds incredibly simple when you say it, but I was very guilty, and I'm sure a lot of people have been, of developing an idea that you think is good, and then trying to get people to come along and participate in it doesn't work. So I had a few of those, but thankfully, a few of them, when we really learned who the audience were, we were able to develop some propositions that worked incredibly well. So that was probably the most satisfying period. I would say the 2.5 years I was with Think were probably the most fun period of my career. And I say most fun because it was just packed full of different experiences, fresh challenges all the time. I did the first interim role I did was with BBC Children in Need. I had never worked in that type of environment before, I got to was able to arrange for Pudsey the bear to come and visit my kids' nursery and primary school. I remember walking into the nursery with Pudsey. I was holding Pudsey's hand, and my son seen us walk through the door, and he shouts out, "It's my dad!" You know, completely ignoring the 6-foot yellow bear stood beside me. So that was a great experience to be able to that. And I went from Muscular Dystrophy UK, whose annual turnover then was £5-6 million, to working on a £60 million campaign, which was amazing. And after that, I did an interim role with Sue Ryder, looking after the 7 hospice fundraising teams. And I'd never worked in hospice fundraising before, and I got this opportunity to oversee the fundraising in these 7 different sites, which was incredible. So I would say Muscular Dystrophy UK is probably the most satisfying period because of what we were able to achieve, and think was just packed full of amazing challenges and different experiences along the way. And it was so fantastic to be able to help, you know, organisations, and then to see them go on and, you know, take the advice that you'd given them and absolutely run with it.
So that huge success that you had with muscular dystrophy, is that down to the team, do you think? Was that down to changes you were making in terms of products and portfolios? Was there a variety of different things?
Probably, I would say both of those things. I would say one of the keys to the success I've had has been able to surround myself with people that are better than me. And I'm absolutely okay with that. You know, I'm not fit in any way, shape, or form with that. But, you know, I love being able to identify these, you know, people with talent and potential, and being able to give them the opportunity to go on and succeed. So I think that was part of it. We had a really fantastic team. We were very close to the cause then, so really got to know the supporters and donors, and seeing very private sides of how that absolutely devastating condition affected the families. So I would say it was a mix of the team and the right products for the right audience.
And how did you find when you were consulting, going from project to project? Did you find that you were really attached to it? You didn't necessarily want to sort of move on, or were you ready to move on to the next project?
Yeah, I certainly found that, sometimes you're like, oh, I would, you would do something and it'd be like, oh, I would love to see this through.
Yeah.
But at that time, one of the reasons that the role with Think was really attractive to me is I had just I'd been with Muscular Dystrophy UK for 9 years. So I'd sort of gone from this long-term committed relationship to a series of short, less committed relationships. So I was dead excited about the variety of challenges. So I didn't initially have that feeling of, oh, I'd really like to see it through. Clearly I did when I went to Children First, because I stayed with them there. But the variety, I was excited by the variety of different challenges. But yeah, it was inevitable you got close to it, and you check in with people to see how they were doing. And I think sometimes people thought you were doing that to check if there was looking for some new business or sale from it. But a lot of the times it's just generally, I just want to see how it's going, because I'm really just generally interested in it.
Brilliant. So what advice would you look to give to someone who was looking to progress within fundraising?
Good question. I think the thing I would say to anybody is own and drive your own development. No one else is going to do it for you, and you shouldn't expect somebody to do it for you. And learning and development's been something I've taken really seriously in my career, and something that I tend to champion in the organisations I've been part of. I do a lot with the Institute of Fundraising, and quite often I will see people deprioritize. I'll see all the time actually, people deprioritizing themselves because they've got something to do at work. And a lot of the work, I spent a lot of time working in community fundraising, and with the greatest respect and fairness to community fundraisers, nobody's going to die if you go to a training course for the day. And I would see we met at a training course I was running for Think, and I knew when I ran those days that organisations would have paid for people to come to it, and there was always a number of people that wouldn't turn up because something more important had come up at work. Actually, I would argue you being better at what you do is really important to your organisation. So I would say, you know, own and drive your own learning and development. Find people you admire and people that can help you, people that inspire you, either formal mentors or informal mentors. I've been lucky enough. I've had some amazing managers over the years. I've had some horrendous managers as well. I've benefited enormously from meeting people that I can pick the phone up to, or I can, when we could go out for coffees, go and have a coffee with somebody and pick their brains about something. I would say also, do the scary things. Don't play it safe. I used to be, when I was at uni, I purposely picked subjects that didn't have presentations as part of it, because I was absolutely terrified of public speaking and pretty important part of a fundraiser's role. So I think in 4 years of uni, I only did 2 presentations, and one of them I had taken so many cameras beforehand, I was in a very serene state of mind. But yeah, absolutely hated that. But then I remember Edith, who I mentioned earlier on, almost kind of like forcing me to do a public presentation. And at Muscular Dystrophy UK, I remember, applying to speak being asked actually to speak at the Institute Fundraising conference one time. And I'd never been to one of those conferences before, so I didn't know what it was like. And my first time going to one was as a speaker, as a third wheel of a 3-person panel at it, and was quite startled on the back of it. I remember thinking to myself, well, if you can do that, if you can stand up in front of your peers and people that know this world inside out, you can do it. Just 2 other things just to say in this, Amy. I would say, start working towards your dream job now. Get those job descriptions of the roles you want to do, identify the things that you potentially don't have, and work towards getting them. I see quite a lot of people that start to do that when the job becomes available. So you go into the recruitment process or the selection process knowing that you've got that gap. Another thing is about longevity. Stay places long enough to achieve things. There's a high turnover in our sector, and I see in CVs all the time people that said, in 18 months I achieved this or I achieved that, and you kind of think, as a recruiter, really? Did you really make that sort of impact in that time frame? Yeah, it can be done, but when you see somebody jumping about all the time, you kind of think, you're actually giving yourself long enough to achieve something. So those are the things I would do. Own and drive your own learning development. Find good people to learn from. Do the scary things. Start working towards your future goals, and stay long enough to achieve some stuff.
Thank you, Gary. I think all those are really relevant, and I know when you were talking about mentors and people you can pick up the phone to, you've certainly been that person to me of late, so I'm very grateful for that. So this is a public shout out to Gary's fabulousness. Gary, do you want to talk to us about some of the things you find most challenging about your current role and about your roles within fundraising?
Yeah, well, if I say sort of talk about more generally, I would say I think one of the biggest challenges, and also one of the exciting things, if you can look at it that way, is about keeping it fresh. So earlier in my career, I always remember coming to the start of April, and the 1st of April, and seeing my income going from absolutely plummet, and then having that motivation to say, right, I've got to go at it again. So trying to keep things fresh, staying ahead of the game has always been a big thing for me. I've always tried to. I learned this from Edith, who I mentioned earlier on. If you can, if you're predicting changes in the landscape, then nobody else is going to pull the carpet out from under you. So if one of my events or initiatives isn't working, I'll be the person that kills it before somebody else does. So, stay ahead of the game, recognise the changes in the world. The advances we've seen in the world have fundamentally changed human behaviour recently. Things like Netflix, we watch what we want when we want to watch it now. You can order clothes, get them delivered same day. That is, those that behaviour change impacts donor expectations. So suddenly, you know, a charity that takes 10 days to send a fundraising pack out, but yet I can buy clothes from Next and get them the same day. You know, if you ask the donor, they'll say, oh yeah, 2 weeks, that's okay, you're a charity. But our donors deserve really good service, and whilst they might say it, you know, it feels like an awful long time, 10 days in that example. So I would say, you know, staying ahead of the game and that desire to be better, you know, challenging yourself all the time, to things. So I think those are probably some of the biggest challenges I find. You know, people, you know, as a director of fundraising, there's only so much I can achieve myself. I need a team of amazing people around about me, and finding and retaining those amazing people is a challenge in the market that we find ourselves in. It's you know, when it comes to recruitment, up until now, who knows what it's going to be like post-COVID, but recruitment has been really tough. And when you know, we're talking earlier on about learning and development, I would sometimes find an organisation would spend more in recruiting somebody than we would ever spend after they've joined the organisation. So, you know, pay a recruitment agency £3,000 to £5,000, then spend next to nothing on retaining that person by investing in their development. So those are probably some of the challenges I would pull out, Amy. Keeping things fresh, finding things that keep you excited, making sure you're not that person that said, well, we used to do it that way, and you know, anticipating what's going to come and being on the front foot, not getting caught out by changes round about. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, absolutely, Gary. And I think that's it's so important to invest in yourself. But both of those points tie in. If you're chasing your own learning and development, and the organisation are there to support you, then that's a perfect combo. And so, on the other hand, is what you find most enjoyable. What's the thing that really drives you? What wakes you up in the morning?
I love helping people succeed, whether that be donors, supporting people to achieve whatever the challenge they want to achieve for whatever personal reason they have. I love being able to see staff members grow. You know, when you know that experience. You know, I've had a few times where you interviewed somebody, and you think, oh yes, you know, there's somebody with some potential, and to be able to help them in some way go on to realize that. And you know, I was fortunate when I was with Muscular Dystrophy UK. I had an amazing director of fundraising, and we were able to develop a really honest relationship where we were able to talk about expectations, and she was really encouraging to me to talk about my future career aspirations, and she would say to me, you know, if I wanted to move on, that she would absolutely support me with that, because she recognised that there's only so long you can keep people, and she would rather we had that open conversation rather than one day I turn up and just resign. And that was really good, and I'll try and encourage people to have those types of conversations with me. Works some of the time. Like in an instance when I was at Muscular Dystrophy UK at 9 years, you know, the senior managers I had under me, you know, I was a blocker to them because I'd been there for a period of time. So unless I was going to go, there was nowhere for them to go internally. So I started to have some conversations with them. So I love helping people succeed. Most of the roles I've had have tended to be turnaround roles as well. So I've tended to have been brought in because something wasn't quite right and there was a change needed. So that's been challenging, but also enjoyable when you can do it. I've never actually come into a role where the team's been, you know, performing, and my job has been to then move it on to the next level. And that was one of the challenges I had at Muscular Dystrophy UK. It's like, well, my initial brief was to turn this around. We've turned it around, and now it's about growing on the success we've had. And every year I would always ask myself, am I still the right person to do this? Because, you know, as I was saying earlier on, I'll be the person to kill my own product rather than somebody else. I would rather identify that it's time for me to go rather than have somebody else tap me on the shoulder and say, right, your time's up, time to go on. So those are some of the most enjoyable things. I also love hitting a target. So anybody that's ever worked with me or been to any of the training days I've done that would have heard me say, one of my expectations of any fundraiser is what your target is and how much you've raised against it. And I expect fundraisers to be able to tell me that. And I get really worried when they don't know the answers to it. So I absolutely love that, that feeling of hitting the target, because it's a tangible measure of success for us in fundraising. But what it means for the organisation, the causes we work for, the people we represent is so much more. So at Children First, as we did last year, we exceeded our net income target. That meant we were able to deliver more support to families and children in Scotland. When I was with Muscular Dystrophy UK, that meant we could fund research, we could provide support to people affected by this devastating condition. It's that's why we do what we do, isn't it? And some people are talented enough to go and find, work in research teams and find cures for these conditions. And for other people, our contribution to the fight is by raising the cash to help make that happen.
That was so well worded. I'm going to write that one down. Our contribution is finding the cash. So you talked then a lot, and you've talked generally today a lot about leadership and management and making sure that you've got the right team. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about what you think makes a good leader, and if someone's looking to progress into leadership, what do you think they could be looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned Rebecca Day, who was the director of fundraising. I worked with her most of my time at Muscular Dystrophy UK. Rebecca was absolutely phenomenal, and after she moved on, she was followed. Sometimes you don't know how good you have it until it's gone, and I knew that she was phenomenal, but she was followed by somebody who was not close to being phenomenal. And that stark contrast is really helpful. I suppose we see it play out, depending on your politics. If you look across the pond, we went from Barack Obama to Donald Trump. It's quite stark. So Rebecca came from a from a hospice fundraising background. So she always appeared knowledgeable about every fundraising discipline. But as I got to know it, she wasn't an expert in everyone, but she was knowledgeable. She knew enough to manage those. And that was one of the things that, when I was looking at directors, I thought earlier in my career that, they have to be an expert in everything. No, you don't. You need to have a good knowledge about these things, but that's not, you hire that, you then hire people to do some of that stuff for you, and your job is about how you create the culture and you bring the people with you and you get the people into the organisation. So, she was also a real clear communicator, so which is something I've always tried to take on. So she was never somebody that would send you like a narky email. She would always, I worked remotely, so she'd pick the phone up, she would explain the rationale for any of her decisions. And I always tried to take that on. At Children First last year, I made a structure change, and one of the things that I did was made sure I personally explained the rationale to everybody. So sometimes that was one-to-one meetings, that was telephone calls, that was a couple of group sessions, but every person in the team heard the rationale for the change we made from the horse's mouth. There was no, second-hand news being passed around. They heard it absolutely from me, and we ended up on the back of that having what I felt was a really good and constructive consultation process, where people really did make some suggestions and well thought through contributions, and we made some tweaks on the back of it. So knowledgeable, clear communicator. Confidence was something I learned from Rebecca as well. There's this great TED Talk, my favourite TED Talk, from Amy Cuddy. Have you ever seen it? She talks about faking it till you become it. So she talked about research that had been done, and essentially the message was, if you don't believe you can do it, you will never convince other people you believe you can do it. So inside you might be a quivering mess, but on the outside, if you can present a degree of confidence and get yourself into the game. So she talked about, one of the examples that Amy Cuddy gave in her TED Talk was about interviews. She said, you would come to interviews and you would find people sitting in reception, kind of like hunched over, reading leaflets. She talked about the importance of like body language and getting yourself into the right frame of mind for what you're about to do. Make sure you present yourself. And the final thing I would say about leaders, good leaders make other people better. They give other people opportunities. So I was afforded along the way. I remember with Rebecca, I wrote a report that should have went to the board explaining a change we were making. And Rebecca gave me back the paper that she actually put forward to the board, and it was fundamentally different to the paper I had written. So I remember having a conversation with her about, well, why was what I put forward not enough, and what could I do next time? So she gave me a chance to do it next time, and gave me more opportunities on the back of that. So that was really good. And I learned from her about also, that was my first experience of being able to interact with trustees and the chief executive. And there's a couple of things I always remembered from her about, status. Don't lower your status when you meet the trustees. I remember her saying to me one time, when we go into this meeting, don't thank them for their time, because that immediately puts them there and you down here. I thought I was just being polite. She would do great things like she would say, trustees dip in and out of the organisation, whereas we live and breathe it every day. So you have to remind them. So she had this great phrase of, you'll remember last time. So I find myself using that a lot. And a great tip for anybody that ever wants to be a director of fundraising: if the chief executive starts giving you fundraising ideas, you've not kept them busy enough. So those are some of the leadership lessons I learned, some of the things I've tried to model going forward, and some of the things I would hope for from, I would say, to anybody aspiring to be a leader. Don't think you have to be an expert in everything. Clear communications, be confident in yourself, or present confidence in yourself, even if you're a quivering mess inside. And your job is to essentially to make other people better.
I love it, and I've written down that TED Talk, so I'll be checking that one out later.
That's
great
fabulous.
Tip. So the next two questions, we're coming to the end of our session, so those are a little bit more silly. So has social distancing given you the opportunity to do things you wouldn't otherwise? Have you started writing a novel? Have you learned a new hobby?
Not really. My days have been pretty full with work. So I've before I start every day, I get up at 7, do some exercise, whether it's at home or going for a run, start work. When I finish, I've been doing the gym that I used to go to. One of the instructors has been doing classes via Zoom. So I've been doing that a couple of nights a week. But since lockdown, every night we got Disney Plus, which was the most perfectly timed product launch. So every night after dinner, the kids, I've got 2 kids, a 10-year-old girl and a 6-year-old son. We've been sitting down and watching a different movie. So we've worked our way through the whole Marvel series in order, which is like 22 movies. So that was quite a commitment. I've also done more handiwork than I ever anticipated as well. I lifted tiles off a bathroom floor, which was the first time I'd ever done that.
I'm very impressed. I think everyone's discovering new DIY talents. Gary, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. One final question, which is about describing your ideal Sunday. What does your ideal Sunday look like?
Sundays in my house are usually quite lazy. My wife normally works every Sunday, so we very rarely have Sundays where the 4 of us are around. But normally it's we try and avoid alarms. If we're up in time, which I usually take the kids, and the three of us do the local junior park run, which is 2 kilometres. I do like going out for breakfast on a Sunday. So in the occasions where the four of us are off, and when cafes and things reopen, I do look forward to being able to do that.
Love it. Nice, chilled, good food. That's what we like. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your experiences. And I know I took a lot from that session, so hopefully those joining us today and those looking back at this session can as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Amy. It's been a lot of fun.
No worries at all. Next week we're joined by Jane George from the RNLI, so that'll be a really good session. Same time next week. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thanks.